Okay, it is 1 o'clock and we want to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Welcome everyone to Crew Detroit's inaugural virtual event, Retooling Your Business for the Future. We are excited to have you here today. Appreciate you dedicating some time to participate in our event that we hope will provide meaningful insight into dialogue centered around managing your business and sustaining that during this pandemic situation, as well as getting some insights on what businesses might look like once these shelter-in-place restrictions are lifted and we can go back to what we know won't be business as usual, but maybe hear some insights on what we think things might look like. My name is Jennifer Chambers. I am a partner with Plante Moran in the Real Estate and Construction Group, and I am pleased to be serving as the Crew Detroit 2020 president. I will be your moderator for today's event. Before we introduce our speakers, we wanted to just mention a couple of things. You have entered the webinar in mute, and we would appreciate if you could stay on mute just for the quality of the audio for all of you who are participating. We will be managing our questions through the chat feature, and we encourage you to utilize that throughout. I will be monitoring that, and then we'll pose the questions to our speakers, and we do have some time dedicated at the end as well to cover that. So we will do our best to get through as much as we can. This is the first of what we anticipate will be a number of other virtual programming events for Crew Detroit. Just as businesses have had to pivot and respond to this pandemic situation, the same holds true for Crew. So our events don't look the same. The remainder of the year might not look the way we might have planned, but we wanted to let you know that Crew is actively rethinking what our schedule looks like and hope to bring you some other meaningful events in the near future. I wanted to take a minute to just acknowledge our major annual sponsors for 2020. We very much appreciate their support and commitment to Crew. As you get to know the organizations in our industry, we'd like you to keep these quality organizations in mind. Major annual sponsors include at the marble level, JLL, Level 1 HVAC, Plante Moran, and Saxy Construction. And at the granite level, AM Higley, HED, Horizon Bank, and Redico. The format of today is that each of our speakers has a short presentation pulled together. They're going to speak for about 10 minutes each, and after that we will transition into some interactive dialogue with both of them and also have a chance to answer your questions. I wanted to take a minute now to introduce our two speakers. They will give you some background on themselves, and then we will get going with the presentation. The first speaker that we have is Bill Lichwalla, CEO and President of Plante Moran Cresa. And we have Heather Greene, Detroit Workplace Design Leader at Stantec Architecture, and is also a past president of Crew Detroit. So Bill, would you like to give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, I have to confess, this is a rare opportunity to be a participant in the first virtual speaking event, and I received a call here a couple of weeks ago about the opportunity to speak about sustaining business during a pandemic. So not only is this the rare opportunity to be the first virtual presenter, but to speak about a topic that a month ago didn't exist, I think is a great opportunity. But I compliment Crew for you guys with your programmatically keeping everyone engaged and involved, because I think that's so much what's going on today. So I appreciate it. Okay, shall I begin?
Well, let's, Heather, I'll give Heather a chance to introduce herself, and then we'll get going with your information.
Hi,
Heather?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. It's so nice seeing everyone's faces. As Jennifer said, I lead the workplace practice at Stantec Architecture here in Detroit. We're an integrated architecture, design, and engineering firm, so we're hopeful that some of our global reach and insight can help break through some of the noise and make sense of everything that we're hearing and seeing. So thank you for letting us be a part of this.
Great. All right, Bill, he's going to be our first speaker. We're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to share my screen so that you can follow along with some of the information that Bill and Heather have pulled together. The floor is yours, Bill.
Thank you, Jennifer. So if we can flip a slide. Just quick, continue the introduction. So I do lead Plante, Moran, Cresa. Plante, Moran, Cresa is one of 3 related parties that are all part of the real estate consulting arm of Plante, Moran. Plante, Moran Living Forward's a senior living development business. Plante, Moran REIA really serves the institutional investment market, both pension and kind of high net worth. Our markets that we operate in are corporate, investor, healthcare, the public sector, government. We do a fair amount of work in K-12 education and community college, and then again, senior living. The services that we provide are asset management, consulting, project management, transaction management. Today, we're managing just over a couple $2 billion of active development projects. On the investment side, we manage about $1 billion under management. With our 85 professional staff members today. So, I'll share some comments about what we're seeing. I also am on the board of Cresa Global and am part of the leadership team of a large client, Detroit client that is pretty active in a number of sectors, including entertainment, that I can speak from kind of how 3 worlds are operating. Continue on. So first, just a little bit of context. The topic, obviously, sustaining during a pandemic. We spent some time organizing for today's talk. This is obviously not our first recession. It won't be our last recession. And even if you go a little bit further, this is really not our first health challenge. Now, obviously, if you go to the next slide. This is an unprecedented challenge in that, parts of our economy are shut down. But over, our history, we've had other challenges. Things like SARS, as we know, didn't impact business anywhere near what this impact is with COVID today in the US, but there's places in Asia, the bird flu and SARS had a much more pronounced impact to the market. And, it's a recognition that we will have challenges, we do have challenges, and there will be future challenges, and trying to balance a little bit of context of, the challenge that we're sitting in today. And we're reminded a lot for those that were active in 2008, worried about, is your bank gonna, have cash to fund that you have put in your bank and trusted in your bank, was every bit of, I can never imagine this happening. Similar to today, I can never imagine that we're going to shut down our entire economy for 60 days. Or something similar to. So you can keep going on. This isn't the first, and I guess this isn't the last of challenges that we're going through. And so we're trying to have some level of context and remind ourselves of that fact. You see all the recessions over the years. You can keep going. So, the question that we're spending a lot of time as a leadership team and candidly as individuals and practitioners is, what does this pandemic look like? How long is it? How disruptive is this going to be for what period of time? And, of all the organizations that I had the opportunity to play either a leadership role or participate in the leadership of the organization, including with our clients, I'm sure you guys are having the same questions and same discussions about, how long is this going to last and how do we plan for our future? So, almost on a daily level, as we started with our shutdown, we've been doing the debate that probably a lot of people are doing every day here within this group is, if this is a short-term disruption that's going to last a few months and social distancing works, our business model, we're going to weather the storm and probably not make it as many substantial changes that we will if we think this is going to be something that's going to have a second wave, a third wave, or a vaccine doesn't come in our future. By the way, stimulus funding obviously has helped. The PPP program in particular for a number of organizations I know has been able to fill the gaps, both for us, but for our clients as well. So we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out where we are in this matrix. Jeffrey, keep going, please. All that is really just trying to influence kind of our midterm and long-term thinking, in midterm, just managing through this period of uncertainty, and longer term, how do we position our firm, and help our clients be positioned. So coming out of the recovery, they're as strong and able to be as successful as we can. From our firm perspective, we've literally tried to almost divide these two activities. We have some task force that are working on kind of some longer term thinking, but the midterm is things like, managing cash and understanding what our capacity is for staff and serving clients. Keep going real quick. So a couple of things. The managing the uncertainty, as I'm sure all of us are doing, when there's uncertainty, the desire, need, and opportunity to over communicate with clients is just huge. I think we're all probably doing the same thing where we're starting early and ending late on calls like this where we're spending time. And it's just when there's so much change and so much uncertainty, the opportunity to spend time with each other has been really important. Two, we're spending just time managing our resource, cash, receivables, the capacity of our people and who's available and what's our workload look like. And then for us, one of the things that we're doing a lot is where there is available capacity is we've always had these assignments and activities that we knew we need to get to, but you're too busy and, serving clients and developing relationships. So this is an opportunity that we're trying to focus some of our available capacity on the thing on the to-do list that we've needed to get it for some time. And contrasting that with, on a longer term perspective, if you can flip slides, please, continuing to invest in relationships. I don't know if everyone else is seeing this, but, if you have something to say, it's amazing the access that we've enjoyed with our clients, our prospects, and professional relationships. When there's so much uncertainty, if you've got a point of view, there is the opportunity now to engage in conversations and build relationships at all levels. That really has been one of the unanticipated but really great benefits that have come out of this last month, at least for us, that we've seen. We still want to grow our team, hire strategically, training, mentor, and even as individuals, a lot of our staff are working on some self-development opportunities that, frequently they've just been too busy to do, and anything from Excel modeling to soft skills. And we're encouraging that to continue. And then we're spending a lot of time, process improvements, and we did a strategic plan, a 10-year strategic plan last year that we are trying to accelerate as we've got some available time. On the items that we're addressing, there are impacted services industries that COVID is addressing, and we're trying to get in front of those issues as quick as we can. We're continuing to make sure that the team that we have in our organization are good long-term fits, and not only just performing well, but just a cultural fit or a service delivery field with long-term career paths that are rewarding for everybody. And then candidly, that efficient administrative tasks, we know there's things that we need to get to, and we're trying to organize our efforts to get to those things. So, our areas of focus through this has been cash, very candidly, and managing cash, and depending on the organization, also managing credit, impact to clients, our staff, and our firm and our business model that may have some adjustments that are going to be, or will have some adjustments that are going to be necessary coming out of this market. Continue on. So on the staff side, all of our organizations, people and our employees, are the lifeblood of our organization. And this year we'll celebrate 25 years as a firm, and so it's taken us 25 years to build a team, and that team knows each other and works well together. And so our ability to have that group both be as comfortable, as stable, and coming out of this feel like we've just done the right things by them has been something we take with great interest. So, we're trying to do this in a couple of different ways. As I said earlier, being open, honest, transparent, and communicating frequently. Each of the organizations that I participate in, there's calls that are daily calls, that are what's the status and the other unintended consequences. We've talked as a team almost more this last month together than I think when we were together all in one office. We had to be a little bit forceful, and tools like Zoom have been an amazing resource that I think has helped all of us stay connected at a level that really is probably more connected than we have, pre-COVID. The reality is there is some need for a shared sacrifice. Revenue is for a lot of organizations, ours included, will be impacted. And, we have had a lot of discussion with our staff about shared sacrifice and shared benefit. For us, we just believe if there's going to be sacrifice, it's got to be across the board. And there's got to be a feeling of equity that we're all in this together. And our clients, are dealing with this. We're dealing with this. And I think if there is this belief we're all in together, that there's an expectation that, there's a feeling of fairness, which was so important for all of us. Last part, this is at a firm level, on an individual level. We have spent a lot of time and a lot of deliberate effort for those that will have time. And we have people that projects have been put on hold that are probably going to come back. Some of the projects are on hold just because construction stopped, as an example, is from a top to bottom, having every person be required to do an inventory of what are they going to do with their available capacity. By the way, some people are slammed dealing with transition, but for a lot, what are you going to do for process? What are you going to do for business development? What are you going to do for self-development? What are the administrative tasks that you haven't got to that we want you to get at you? And on the individual level, how do you develop, your skills that and take the opportunity to do some self-development during this period? On the client side, client selection, obviously when we have been so impacted as a market, one of the issues is understanding the risk profile of our clients and what their experience, and understanding things like receivables and billing and the credit risk associated with each of our clients. So as we've looked at client selection, we're trying to be judicious, good stewards of our organization and make sure we have the resources to serve our client base available. With that said, kind of last two buckets in investing in relationships, and I said earlier, we've had a dialogue with leases, landlords, and lenders has kind of been a theme, and that perspective of the impact of leases, landlords, and lenders in an occupancy cost. There was this big desire for looking at rent deferments and things like that came really quickly in the market as our clients are all dealing with the same realities. The ability to develop and have contacts with senior people. If there's a story and a message to say, people have time, and we have found the opportunity to have just interaction with senior people has been really great in the market. Okay. The other thing we've spent a decent amount of time on managing through this period, scenario planning. The truth is we don't know what's going to happen coming out of the market. So kind of best case, worst case modeling. And we're really encouraging our team to look at the credit worthiness, the ability to pay, and as we're making decisions to take on either new work or how we're continuing to invest in our time. Not so much with Plante, but on the board I'm on, the issue about when cash flow becomes tight and we're trying to manage through our resources. The discussions that we're having on the lender side and being very open, transparent with our lenders and whether we should draw down covenants, et cetera, with lines of credits. Our open dialogue with lenders, we have found our lenders to be very pragmatic and realistic about what's going on in the market, as long as you have the dialogue. The CARES Act obviously has been a big part for our client base. Plante as a firm has a very large initiative on CARES Act and what's available in resources to support organizations of all types. So the CARES Act's been really just an amazing tool for a lot of organizations that are in our client base. Okay. I mentioned earlier, we've got some people looking longer term and task force. So one of the things that we've tried to build in our model is through different service, industry, and geography mix, how do we bring some sustainability organizations through diversifying our revenue stream? So, we're in the public sector as one of our big asset classes that we serve. The public sector is really continuing in a much stronger pace than corporate America, certainly hospitality, certainly retail, which has been shut down immediately. So as we continue to look, not only just through this recovery, but position our firm to weather various recessions and ups and downs, we spend a lot of time on diversifying our revenue streams. You think a lot of what we work on is, as an industry, is you build a building, you sign a lease, you buy a building, and there's all kinds of services that are surrounding that. There's legal services, there's title work, there's FF&E that gets bought, service, installed, moving. And then you have this period of occupancy that goes a long time. Well, occupancy is a longer term stream of revenue. So things like asset management, property management, outsourcing, et cetera, tend to not be as large a dollar value or high a margin, but they tend to be a great stream of base of revenue. So as we've got into different businesses like asset management, a lot of what we've did is we tried to have a sustainable base of revenue to weather kind of the peaks and valleys of the economy. Process and operations, we continue to invest in our service utilization, kind of the back of the house. And last but not least, we're spending a lot of time just looking at what the future state. Balance sheets of a lot of organizations are going to be hit hard, which is going to mean capital obviously is going to be slowed down coming out of this market. So what does that mean? What are different services and niches and market perspectives that we think are going to be opportunities that we need to respond to our clients? So all of this, if you go to the next page, just what are we doing? Look, we are betting on a vaccine, and in that chart, look, we don't know. Truthfully, I don't think anyone knows. Whether you listen to CNN, Fox, MSNBC, or whatever else, you get a little different flavor of what may happen. But in the interim, the technology, I think we'd all agree, has been phenomenal. I think 2 or 3 years ago, Zoom, Teams, all this didn't exist, and I think we're so blessed that these tools are available. Our organization generally, over the last month, you hear this a lot, like we are busy, and it's dealing with the transitions, dealing with the daily COVID calls, dealing with trying to be over communicative with our staff, with our clients, et cetera. So, it's a little bit surprising is how busy we've been for a period where, never worked so hard when we're not building anything right now. A lot of this, we are encouraging our team, and individually, we're trying to get in front of our clients, key prospects. And as I said, people will talk if you've got a solution or you've got a point of view. We've been very fortunate and very pleased by how able you can entertain discussions with senior people. We've talked about this. Revenue is going to drop, shared sacrifice. We've also talked that we think our best collective return as a firm and for our individual within a firm is we've got to invest in the firm, but candidly in each other and ourselves. And, you could take this period with some slowdown and just kind of cooler jets, or we can try to double down and invest and just try to be better. And we've taken the latter perspective. We as a firm did do a 10-year strategic plan last year. we're getting at stuff that it's just difficult to do normally when you're serving clients and staff so much. So again, we're working and investing on some of the non-charge activities that we really want to get to. And last but not least, we want to grow coming out of this. So we are strategically hiring with an emphasis on strategically. We're still training, we're still mentoring, and we want to use this time to make our team better. So coming out of this, our platform's better, our relationship base is better, and we have as strong a team as we possibly can have.
So Bill, one of the questions that came in, and I think it's a common question that, is still subject to much speculation, but at the beginning, the word recession was thrown out there, and I'm just trying to get a pulse on what your thoughts are, what you've seen or heard from your clients, from the board you sit on. Is that projected? Do you think that that's what we're entering into? Are we already in it? Or is it more optimistic that it's going to be short term with a quick recovery?
I mean, I think so much of that ties of what happens with the healthcare solution, right? So if the market opened up in a way that it's not going to immediately, it's probably a hit to a lot of balance sheets. But a lot of things are going to continue. But we're betting, that we're going to get a vaccine, but we're betting that social distancing is still going to be necessary, and it's going to change different businesses in different way. And those that are negative impacted, it's going to cascade through the economy. So we're betting we're in a recession. We're going to be in a recession. How long it's going to come, I don't know. That clearly, the mitigant of this is all the stimulus that's been brought to the market. $6 billion of stimulus is a huge amount. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what happens. Some others smarter than me will tell you what's going to happen longer term with that much stimulus in the market. It has been a plug. There's no doubt about it. When you think about locally restaurants, bars, hotels that are going to generate some needed stimulus that otherwise would literally be shutting doors.
Right. And I think generally there's the notion that, 10, 12 years ago, we weren't prepared for this as a country, and didn't have the right financial infrastructures in place and backstops. And now, having gone through that and having the right levers to pull, seeing the government take action certainly seems to have provided some level of confidence that we can weather this storm, perhaps, again, just speculation, stronger than we did, 12 years ago. I know Heather has some comments on these niche sectors as well, but from your perspective on things like higher ed, colleges, schools, what are you hearing in terms of that longer range planning? Do people go back in the fall? Does it look different? What's the sense there?
Well, and Heather will have some comments on that because of so much of what they do, at least locally, is community college. The K-12 market, really, we are looking for direction. So there is conversations of everything. People will come back in August. We're going to start a little early to be prepared for remote learning. We as a firm have like $500 million this summer of construction that we're supposed to do in K-12 education. And it's actually like the worst environment because normally we know schools shut down in June and they open up in September. Or I don't know what's going to happen. Schools are shut down right now, but we can't build. And we don't know if schools are going to start after Labor Day or they're going to start August 1st. So candidly, there's still a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah. So that's probably a good segue into Heather's commentary from workplace design, but also just public space and in general space transformations. Heather's going to speak a little bit about what we're seeing and what Stantec's doing as well to address that.
No, that's great, Jennifer. Can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Okay. I think it's really interesting, just teeing up and going on what Bill was saying. When everything really kind of hit hard here in Detroit just a handful of weeks ago, we really rallied our teams from all of these sectors to try to learn from each other and learn from our clients and talk to them about what their fears were. So a lot of the insights that we're hoping are meaningful that we can bring to you today and share some sneak peeks of kind of things that have already been in the works for a while. Really focus on people in space, not specifically to workplace. There are things that businesses need to do that are different than our education clients, or like Bill said, our retail clients and our hospitality clients. We anticipate that some of those might be further behind in catching up and really being able to transform. But it becomes about how do we get people safely engaging together in spaces in ways that are meaningful, in ways that support our economy. And why we go to school or why we go to work in the beginning is because we're all desperate for that human interaction and that human touch. So we will get there. And Jennifer, if you want to go to the next slide, I think where I really wanted to start today is there's so much noise. There's so many predictions around what 24 months or 36 months are going to look like. And the frank reality is we don't know yet. There are things that we know, and there are things that we need to start thinking about. How do we plan and solve for the unknowns? So this whole idea of work from home, even just a handful of months ago, it was future focused companies or some people in some departments could work from home. It was considered a luxury. It was something maybe you earned, or something if you had a certain type of job or a certain type of trust, then you were allowed to work from home. Now this is a panic response, a reality that we needed to do, and everyone's working from home. Will this become a long-term strategy to manage the spatial tensions that we need to solve for social distancing? We believe so, at least in the short term. The reality is, and again, I'll defer to Bill on the business and the financial side of this, most companies can't afford as a long-term strategy to take their density from 150 square feet or 200 square feet per person and make that 350 square feet per person as a long-term strategy. It's not sustainable and counterproductive to many of the things that we ask workplaces to do. But we know that social distancing has to be followed. We know that there's going to be a period of time where there's a lot of fear and where safety needs to be the top priority. And so we need to find manageable ways to bring people back to place in a way that keeps them safe and keeps them healthy. So some of the things that we're talking about globally with our clients are things like, how do we manage mental illness? So before this even happened, NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, said just in the US, there was $19 billion lost to mental illness last year. That was before this pandemic hit. So our people are hurting. They're scared for their jobs. They're scared for their health. They're scared for their family. And they need to know that the buildings and the places that they work in and send their kids to school in are going to be prepared. So how are we thinking about how do we support each other in the future? Thinking about why human connection matters so much, why we're all so desperate to go back to work, is because we're inherently social as human beings, and because so many wonderful things happen when you bring people together. But we have to solve for social distancing. So there's a lot out there around that, and we'll touch on a few of those things. But I guess I'd challenge you to think about what comes next. Like, what are the silver linings that we can learn from this? Bill was talking about taking the time to work on your strategic plan, taking the time to mentor each other, grow. What we're hearing from our clients and what we're advising our clients is that walking the talk is more critical now than ever. Your message to your employees, your message to your clients, it has to be authentic, and you have to follow through with what you say you're going to do. So Bill, I loved what you were talking about kind of this shared belief, shared value, shared sacrifice. You know, we have to put people at the center of everything that becomes a scenario planning solution for short-term and long-term. And we have an opportunity. I know this sounds a little too optimistic when we're talking about health and death and economies crashing and recessions, but the silver linings that have come out of these things, we have an opportunity to leverage them in a way that can not just send us back to normal, but make that new normal a better normal. Jennifer, can you go to the next one? Okay, so this is the #1 question that we are getting asked. We spent the first 2 weeks in lockdown here in Detroit. I spent, I would say, probably about 60 hours on the phone that first week and a half with clients both here and throughout the Great Lakes region that wanted to know, what do I do now? So when social distancing restrictions are lifted and we can bring people back to work, what do I do to make them feel safe? And again, I cannot say this enough, communicate. There's no such thing as over communicating right now. Be authentic in your message, be transparent, be honest, and keep those communications consistent. We have to focus on prioritizing health. So I'm going to share from our research and our global database on kind of what other clients are doing, some extremes, and you have to find the scalable solution that works for your organization or for your clients. But it has to start with safety and holistic sanitation. So physical health is incredibly important. There's low-hanging fruit and things that you know that you need to put hand sanitizers in places. You know that you should be exploring how do we make this safe in terms of distancing people from each other and maintaining those protocols. We have some really future-focused clients that are looking at smart building technology to help them manage things for the long term. Things like heat sensors that can understand where the most densely populated spaces are, use of robotic UV robots to come in and screen things or make sure that you're scheduling for spaces to be cleaned in a more timely manner. You need to be thinking about your indoor air quality. This is the perfect time to flush out your building systems, look at your mechanical systems, install filters if you don't have them, and really talk to your building engineers, because quality indoor air has such significant ties to cognitive and physical health that these are changes we should be making in our schools and in our populated buildings right now while we have the opportunity to do so. Some other kind of things that are on the fringes of that is, how do we undensify the office right now? So thinking about benching, thinking about workstations, thinking about office configurations. I would caution you against knee-jerk reactions that everything should go back to an 84-inch high panel and an 8x8 cube and a private office, because we don't know what the long-term implications are. And we do know that work from home, while it's a panic response to a pandemic, that there are a lot of things that are working. There's a lot of technology that has improved what we're doing and how we can do it. But the meaning of place is where people come together to build trust. And that's where they come together to collaborate and innovate and be social. And so many of those things still require human beings being around other human beings. Some of the things that we're hearing to solve for this is 50-50 shifts. So thinking about, could 50% of your team work in the office 2 days a week and be remote the other days? Thinking about extended hours and off hours, allowing and empowering people to choose how and when they do their best work. We're also hearing that some school districts across the country are thinking about this as a possible solution for K through 12. There was an article just in Ohio talking about trying to get density in K through 12 classrooms down to 8 or 10 students and doing off hours or multiple shifts. The challenge becomes, just like there aren't enough medical nurses and doctors, we don't have enough teachers to manage that in a perfect scenario right now. So we need to get creative in our solutions. A couple other things I wanted to share. Thinking about future planning, if you could pause right now and take a minute, what would you do differently? One of the really unique things that I have to admit I didn't know that Stantec had until this pandemic happened here. We actually had a pandemic committee that was formed 11 years ago. It's a cross-functional group of leaders and practitioners that think about everything from HR policies, financial capital, technology, how we're going to work with our clients, how we're going to support our teams, what other benefits or services that we can provide to our employees to make them feel safe and make sure we're taking care of them. So things like directing people to EAP and mental health services, or wanting to give back to our communities. So, right now our pandemic committee and our leaders are matching whatever donations our teams can and afford to make in their local communities to charities and foundations that can help our clients and help the places where we live. So I think thinking about what would you do differently, knowing what you know today, is a great way to think about how do you plan for the future. And the last thing I would really challenge you to hold on to is do an inventory of what surprised you that worked really, really well that you weren't planning for. So I love the amount of social media learning that's come out of this. People have access to fitness classes and meditation classes and cooking classes. And I mean, how many people do you see baking banana bread every day? And, you know, they're learning a hobby and they're taking care of themselves, as well as this whole idea of checking in. I don't know if 3 months ago we all realized how busy we were. If we really took the time to check in with our teams, check in with our clients, our neighbors, our family, and just say, how are you doing? How can I help you? And so I hope that these are the things that we start to hold on to and we make a place for in a new way of working. We can go to the next one. Okay, I'm gonna take a pause because I'm so excited to share this with you. This is a sneak peek of something that's going to be officially rolled out in a few weeks. I had the privilege of working with a very talented team here locally in Detroit, and a partnership through a sponsorship that Stantec did with Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health. We started this research project 2.5 years ago, and it's very timely that we were actually going to roll our point of view and our white paper out about 4 weeks ago. And I'll explain why we put that on pause. But we approached this research wanting to understand, in a world where we're constantly asked to prove the value of space and prove the value of real estate and prove the value of design, if we could find a return on investment in investing in your people and their well-being. So through Harvard, they have a virtual reality lab, which is how we conducted the study. Participants came on multiple visits over a period of time and worked in 4 different environments. So 3 that were biophilic, which means this connection with nature. There's 14 patterns that you can use in design. And 1 that was our lean environment, which was our non-biophilic environment. If you look I know I'm pointing and you can't see me pointing. If you look at the diagram kind of middle left, this is a sketch of what the virtual reality lab looks like. So participants have about 15 to 20 minutes to get used to being in virtual reality. They're wearing goggles. The goggles had eye tracking sensors so we could understand how long they were looking at different elements and at what intensity. And then they also had paper and computers, so they were actually working in this immersive experience. What was really exciting for us as designers was that we were able to prove that there's a physiological impact in investing in your employees' health and well-being. So thinking about things like blood pressure, heart rate variability, we saw all of these scores improve across all activity types. So we designed environments thinking about an activity-based planning module. So social spaces, focus spaces, collaborative spaces. We wanted to understand if they would all be the same if we made these changes across the board, or if there were certain things that we could do that would give us a higher impact. We were able to measure stress levels through a test called skin conductance levels, which measures the body's physiological response to stress. And we were able to see that those scores also went down, which means when we put these patterns into practice and we start to weave them into our ethos of design, we can actually make people healthier in space. The other key and really exciting thing for us is, over the last 10 years, the 2 things as workplace designers and practitioners that we get asked for the most is, how do I help my company become more innovative? Does place play a role in that? And how do I attract and retain the best talent? And the creativity and innovation piece, we were able to measure convergent and divergent brain functions through a Stroop test and an alternatives use test. And the alternatives use test is a benchmark for creativity scores, where the divergent tests measure more computational accuracy and speed. And on the innovation side, we were able to see these scores went way up across all floor plans. So open office areas, collaborative areas, social spaces. And from a business standpoint, you know, we approached this with a message and a point of view that said, if you really want to be competitive, health and well-being is the next competitive advantage. And then this pandemic hit, and we put the brakes on everything, and we went into a couple deep cross leadership, cross sector conversations, and said, we don't feel Like, we can go out to the market and tell people that health and well-being is a competitive advantage. In light of all of this, shouldn't we be thinking that investing in health and well-being with these physiological and these cognitive and emotional markers, does it become a necessity now? Do we need to do this and find a way to scale these solutions and use these philosophies and these principles and patterns in a meaningful way across all budgets and all markets and all building types to actually really help people? So building on that, Jennifer, I don't know if you want to go to the next one. I guess what I didn't want to do today was tell you how to create one-way corridors or tell you how to seat people 6 feet apart. Because as an interior designer, I guess I still believe that place will play a role in this on the other side and be really important to our community and our culture. I wanted to talk to you about how could we maybe think about it a little bit differently and how could we reimagine it to be better? And I'm going to take you way back if it's been a while since you've opened a Psych 101 book, but this was a Maslow hierarchy diagram that was really integral to our Harvard study. We kept going back to this, and if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see that we broke this out into the building, the experience, and the outcome. And so thinking about what's going on in our global culture through this pandemic and this big pause that we've all had, why do we want to go back to the workplace? Why do we want to go back to work? And I'll share for me, that top marker, that purpose and meaning. I feel as an interior designer that my number one goal is to design places for people, places that make people feel comfortable, that make them feel safe, that make them feel connected, that give them an opportunity to connect to their purpose. And that's my purpose. That's why I got out of bed every morning and love what I do. But to achieve that, to get to that place where your company or your space or a community park do that for a neighborhood, we have to understand this intersection between great spaces and great culture, because place doesn't exist without people and ideas. That's why we all want to come together. And right now, the only way to do that is to earn our team and our community's trust by designing buildings that are safe, by designing buildings that take care of them, and do it better. So I guess I would leave you with this, this pause and this devastation and the effects that it has had on life and on community and on our economy. We need to find the silver lining that we can hold on to and try to do better and challenge our commercial real estate industry across the board. How can we come together and do this better? If there's anything that we can do to help you, if I can answer any other questions, I'm happy to, but would love to see what ideas you guys come up with as well.
Thanks, Heather. And as you were talking, you actually, you threw in there, kind of how to manage all of this across budgets. And, I pause and I wonder if, while this is great thought in terms of focusing not just on the physical, space, like you said, the partitions, the walls, the physical structure of it, but also the mental and emotional aspects. How are you advising clients who are starting or being persuaded to think that way to manage that when they're also faced with very troubling financial times, even if it's short term right now? Again, we don't know. How do you balance that? And Bill, I'd be curious too on your thoughts of those are competing struggles, right? In terms of, we know we might need to make some different investments. How do we do that when we're very financially challenged right now?
I think there's two parts. I mean, there's an element of just safety, that, safety of your team and guests that may come, almost irrespective of budget. That's just got to be into our budgets. It's mission critical to be able to do that. To be honest with you, every one of our clients are going through the same thing right now. They're doing what we're doing. We're trying to learn, trying to figure out, what are possibilities and what are the impacts of those possibilities. And so, it's almost too early to tell right now, or at least for our client base. Everyone's studying. There's not a firm that's probably not on this call that are not engaged in some way to deal with what the world's going to look like. But what's it going to cost? Where is it going to be? It's all going to be, tied into what's the health outcome, and it's going to drive it. But it's too early to tell, to be honest with you, for us.
I think from a physical space standpoint and from the mental side, I mean, I want to go back to the fact that mental illness was a serious problem in this country before this, and this is just going to compound this. So if we think about that 193 billion that was lost in the US just in 2019 as a marker for what was there before, shifting these priorities and making sure that people have access to indoor air quality, that people feel safe, that people have access to sanitation and can maintain social distancing in the short term, but thinking about investing in health and well-being no longer as an amenity, but part of that contract that you're making with your team to take care of each other and shared sacrifice, shared belief system, I think is the shift that needs to happen. What shakes out in order to pay for this, I think, is what we're all trying to figure out right now. I also hope that the drive and the need for smart building technology will help start to make those things more accessible to a wider range of organizations.
I do think.
Oh, I was going to say, perhaps there's, like you said, Bill, you have to do some things immediately regardless, because we're going to have to provide for the safety and well-being in an immediate time frame for people to feel safe coming back. And maybe there's the hope that workplaces don't look at that as a short-term fix, but Heather, kind of rather what you're focusing on is more that should be a long-term shift if you can build that into your plan. To make it a greater focus than perhaps it has been in the past. So it's not just something you're fixing for the short term, but it's something that you're also trying to fix for the long term as well. Bill, what were you going to say?
Okay, I mean, things like manufacturing and distribution, in some ways, like product flow, my bet is that goes back. I do think, whether it's generational or whether you had early adopters or versus late adopters, this forced all of us crash course to work remotely at a speed and a pace that no one planned on. So you talked about budgets. The world's moved to free addressing more and more over a number of years, but those that were skeptical have got to see firsthand what life can be working remotely. And I have high expectation that there is lessons learned that allows us to understand that you can work remotely, probably more than thought. And to the extent that you can do that, I think that can drive down occupancy costs. And that may be part of what gets funded for some additional costs that are going to necessitate. Look, 9/11 necessitated more security. This is going to necessitate more sanitation, even if we have a vaccine, if nothing else, because consumer behavior are just going to have a new fear that they didn't have before, at least for a while. So
I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that, the way that this has shifted our work from home, imagine doing this with potentially not homeschooling your children at the same time, or not having your spouse trying to share your kitchen table with you, and actually having a plan to continue work from home in a meaningful way. Allowing this choice to continue and this empowerment of your team, this trust within your team, gives us more flexibility in spatial planning and gives us the opportunity to afford to do these other things that we couldn't and should be thinking about. The other thing, Bill, when we were talking yesterday about this, you brought up the 9/11 thing. We talked a lot the other day around the short-term knee-jerk reactions. We have a choice to make the short-term reaction safe, and we need to do that. That can't be something that's negated, but we have an opportunity to not drive our long-term thinking by only fear. And so we know that sanitation will need to be improved. We know that, things like shaking a stranger at a business meeting may not continue, but that doesn't mean that you'll never hug your parents again. And we need to remind ourselves to keep a balanced thinking approach before we make long-term expensive decisions.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit, just if we think about different sectors, talked about, what we might see from the higher ed, the K-12 perspective, from, entertainment spaces, retail spaces, going beyond the workplace. What are both of you kind of hearing in terms of how those might need to be reorganized or rethought? Any feedback there?
Bill, you want to go first?
Go ahead, please.
I would say the number one thing we're being asked for from our urban places group is, especially in urban areas, how do people safely commute to where they need to and want to go? So a little bit separate from kind of the suburban sprawl of much of Metro Detroit, this idea of how do you get people safely around the community in a way that makes sense is something that's driving change. And then our retail clients are asking us things like, will people buy clothes that 8 other people or 8,000 other people tried on? Will, will fitting rooms need to be fit out with sinks and ways to sanitize? Will you even want to go into a fitting room and try everything on? We don't know yet. We also don't know, based on how long it takes us to recover, what everyone's discretionable income will be. There are silver linings and slivers of hope, though. China started working again on the largest arena and stadium that's being built right now. And that gives me optimistic hope that people will still want to go to a game together, that these things will happen. Will they happen in 2020 or 2021? I think that really depends on a vaccine. I think things will shift, but I think people still want to come together and interact in communities, retail, hospitality, workplace, all of those spaces.
Well said.
So one of the key themes I think that emerged, and I think has emerged elsewhere also, but really came through both from design perspectives and also from just managing your business, is flexibility. There is still so much that's unknown. And I liked, the grid that Bill showed early on, just to try to figure out, even for yourself, taking time to take that inventory to figure out, okay, what is my business doing? Where does my business fit? How do we see this shaking out? And putting yourself on that grid in terms of the value that you bring to your organization, and making sure that not only our business is flexible, but we as people are flexible to be able to continue to contribute as well. But I think being flexible in design, being flexible in how we're managing, will provide us the opportunity to weather this until we have some more of those known facts of how things are actually going to change. So taking stock in what the short-term responses are, as well as what some long-term responses should be, and trying to make sure you're poised for both of those. So we are nearing the end of our time here. Again, I really appreciate Heather and Bill pulling this together. We actually had a crew event planned for April 22nd. Live was supposed to be in Pontiac. And within just a few short weeks ago, we reimagined this event. Our program committee jumped on it and thought about a way to still make retooling your business for the future applicable, but in a different way. And I appreciate Bill and Heather being willing to be part of this and share some of their insights with you. We hope that you will stay connected to Crew. For some of you, this might be your first experience with Crew Detroit. So please stay connected to us through crewdetroit.org, our website, on social media. Again, we really appreciate you dedicating your time today, and we hope to connect with you in our future events. So everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you later.
Take care.
Thank you.